when you try to write, this
stacking your entire day back to back to back.
a time when you are completely stress-free and greetings from Chicagoland. Hi, everybody. This is Munira's Musings. Welcome, everybody. We bring you these podcasts where a story can change the way you see the world. Each episode, we sit down with remarkable guests whose journeys open doors to insight, growth, and often to a new perspective. These are stories that spark real conversations, part storytelling, part soul searching, and an invitation to grow. Go ahead, tune in, grab your cup of coffee, and listen in because today's story might be the spark you've been waiting for. So, welcome, Daniela. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm in Buffalo, New York, so not too far from you. I'm a full-time social worker, so I've been doing that for almost 30 years, clinically trained in all things mindfulness, stress management, coping skills. I'm also a mom of two. I'm a burnout prevention specialist as part of my business, Best D Life, helping you find the bliss in your busy. And my journey for that began probably almost 20 years ago. I was going through a divorce. I was a single mom. My kids were 4 and 6 months old. And I was just trying to do it all, be it all, prove that I was capable, show that I could handle everything. I wasn't great at asking for help. And in that process, I drove myself straight into my own burnout. I wasn't practicing what I helped other people with. I was irritable, snapping, and just not showing up in the way I knew I could, as well as how I wanted my kids to remember me. So I started kind of using some of those social work skills to help myself. I started a daily gratitude practice. Our grocery store had free childcare, so I started using that, as well as I joined a gym with childcare. And I realized, by taking these small moments to set aside time for myself, not only was I showing up better, but my kids were too. I was doing better at work. I was connecting better. And, people were even coming and asking, what was I doing? How was I fitting these things in? As well as even just sending me moments that they took time for themselves because of something I said or did. And I realized I think we're all looking for that validation and permission that it's okay to take time for ourselves. So that's kind of where my entrepreneurial journey began, that I realized, this was something that I needed to be sharing with so many other people so that we're preventing burnout. We're taking time for ourselves and living that lifestyle that we dream about or say we want to have every single day.
So you talked about, we're just going to dive into this, right? So you talked about being a social worker and a mother of two, which is, of course, a stressful job. So how did you jump into social work?
When I was in college, I had read this book. It's called One Little Boy. And I don't know, it just made me realize I wanted to be doing something to help people. So I was originally a psychology and social work major, and then I got my master's in social work. And so, it just kind of started from there. I just really liked doing that kind of work and being able to help. Specifically, I was working with young people for a long time.
So this is very stressful, right? Being a social worker, because you have to listen to them, sometimes remove them. I know different social workers do different things, but you specifically work with children. Right?
Yeah, I work at a high school, so I don't remove anybody from the home. Actually, that doesn't happen as often as people think it does. But it is stressful. There's this whole level of secondary trauma that you experience when you hear somebody's trauma, when you see what they're going through. It's almost kind of like that bystander effect of if you saw a car accident, even though you're not in the car accident, you're still emotionally affected by witnessing that event. And so being a social worker, being any kind of healthcare provider, caregiver, those types of things, they found that you experience that secondary trauma, as well as there's what's called compassion fatigue, where sometimes if you spend so much time pouring into everybody else, you can get exhausted from that as well if you don't take that same time and dedication to then taking care of yourself and nurturing your own energy.
So, which is great segue. so this happens to all entrepreneurs as well, because entrepreneurs feel like they have to keep going at their business, and there's all this talk about being consistent, and you have to show up, and you have to be there, and do this, do that. How does this relate to the taking time for yourself?
Yeah, actually, studies have shown that actually entrepreneurs are at higher risk for burnout than the average worker just because they're so passionate about what they're doing. And so they go all in, they toss their boundaries out the window. If you had a job you didn't like by 5 o'clock, you'd be like, bye, I'm going home. But when you're an entrepreneur, when you love your business, you can spend all sorts of crazy hours working on it. You'll choose to do that because you enjoy what you're doing, but maybe then you don't take time to eat, to sleep as much as you should, to connect with others. In addition to losing your boundaries, you ride those highs and lows of that business so much more intensely because that's your baby, that's your passion, as well as it can be very isolating if you're a solopreneur, you're not connecting with other entrepreneurs through networking group and things like that. And so definitely, you need to be very conscious of maintaining your boundaries, still taking care of yourself in so many other parts of your life when it comes to how you connect with others. When I talk about self-care, it's not like spa days and massages. There's a very practical strategy to incorporate self-care so that you're taking care of yourself in micro moments throughout your entire day.
It's funny you bring this up because I've not done a podcast in 3 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reason was that one person canceled, and then I didn't get panic. I was supposed to get panic and say, you know what, I don't have a guest. What am I going to do? But I said, let it go. And then for the next 2 weeks, I was out on a religious sabbatical, so I didn't do it. But that allowed me to come back with a vigor, and this is my first podcast back, right? So this happens, and also, so I like the fact that we're talking about it. But then you say that entrepreneurs are on the verge of getting into this burnout phase. And I know we like what we do. What are some things that lead to burnout? Let's talk about that, and then let's find remedies for that.
Yeah, like I said, when you toss your boundaries out the window, you might not have set work hours because you work from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. You're checking emails when you're out with friends or at your kid's soccer game. You might cancel other plans because you feel like you need to be putting this first. Like I said, so that's definitely one of the ways, especially as a solopreneur and an entrepreneur, you can be setting yourself up for burnout because boundaries are essential to work-life balance. When I talk about balance, it's not about everything being equal. That's not practical or realistic. Balance comes from your ability to adapt, pivot, have resilience, and then have those boundaries. And those 4 areas are where you're going to find that work-life balance. And so if you're not taking all those areas into account, adapting and pivot means you have some flexibility when it comes to how you're setting up your day, how you're working through things. Resilience comes from that mental fitness, and a lot of that comes from those self-care pieces we'll talk about. And so you can bounce back from all the highs and lows that happen in business. Like you said, you had one guest cancel, and initially you would go into panic mode. You would, it'd be a crisis. And so that affects you then emotionally. And those boundaries around your time so that you're still pouring into all those other areas of your life, not just your business.
That's awesome. So now the first thing I heard you say is have set hours.
Mm-hmm.
As a entrepreneur, it's very hard to do that, but teach us how to do that, right?
Yeah, when you communicate your boundaries, it gives you and everybody around you the freedom to just know when you're available. So that can be as simple as putting an outgoing message that automatically replies to emails. Thanks so much for getting back to me. I respond within 24 hours during business hours, Monday through Friday between 9 to 5. Like it can be as simple as an automatic reply going out to any email that comes in. You can have those business hours posted on your website, on your social media. And so then at that point, no one's expecting you to get back to them at 9 o'clock at night or at 5 in the morning because you've already posted when you're available, when you respond. And as soon as you communicate that, it lifts a lot of feeling those expectations and that guilt and all those kind of things that you have to be on all the time. So that's one key area.
And saying that, I want to add to that too. I've realized and discovered a few months ago the schedule your email, because if you are not wanting to be overwhelmed, you don't want to overwhelm somebody else too. So when you try to write, and this is just a tip that I use, when I write emails to other people, I try to send an email, but schedule it in such a way that it goes out maybe at 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning, my time. So then the person receiving it receives it, whatever time zone they have, but at least it goes out the way I want it. But it also works that way because it allows them to think that you're not a workaholic sending emails at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. So that one
Exactly.
way.
Exactly. Yep. So that's definitely one area. And like you said, having that time piece, being aware of your time, time planning, first I work on your mindset when I help people. And the second part is your time planning. What are you prioritizing every day? Because as soon as you make everything important, nothing is important. So you really need to kind of look at the tasks that are on your list and be able to prioritize what's truly important and urgent and has to happen that day. And then when you plan your day, not only create blocks of time for those activities, but create space in between them. So you're not stacking your entire day back to back to back. And you want those buffer zones in between your activities. One, in case life comes up unexpectedly, you have the ability to adapt and pivot because you have some space and some breathing room in your day. But also, that free time then is where you can start fitting in micro moments of self-care throughout your entire day because you have that planned and scheduled just like any other meeting or doctor's appointment. And so when I talk about self-care, like I said, that last piece, it's not spa days and bubble baths and massages. Even though those things are great, they're not sustainable on a day-to-day basis. And so you wouldn't, eat on Sunday and think you're not going to be starving on Tuesday. You can't do self-care on Saturday and think you're good for the week. And so you need sustainable habits throughout every single day. And so when I talk about it, there's 8 different pillars that this encompasses. And this is everything from how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you dress, how you decorate and organize your home, how you think about money, how you connect with others, as well as that traditional personal development like meditation, mindfulness, journaling, those types of things. And so when you start to see self-care from this different lens, and you can do, I have a small, even like 1-minute self-care practice that you can do. When you see it in that small micro moment, you think, I have a minute, I can find 1 minute. Even if it's as small as when you pick up your cup of coffee in the morning and you take a mindful moment to feel the warmth of the mug, to smell your coffee, to feel how it goes down your throat, to really taste it and savor it. That quick 30 seconds to 1 minute, science has shown can lower your stress levels, your heart rate, your cortisol levels. You start stacking micro moments like that throughout your entire day, and now you're in a constant state where you can respond rather than react when life happens. Because self-care also isn't just about being calm, it's also about recharging you, building your confidence and your energy levels so that you show up in your best way possible.
Okay. So thank you for sharing those tips. So, so you've talked about how to reduce the stress. Is there ever a time when you are completely stress-free and not driving yourself nuts in all of this?
I think a lot of times people always assume stress is bad. Stress is a normal part of life. Some of the happiest moments of your life, getting married, buying a house, having a baby, on the stress level scales, those are actually some of the highest stress levels possible, can be from positive experiences because they involve change. And so there's always going to be parts of fluctuation and change. You might get micro moments where you feel like you have nothing on your plate, but life is a series of, different stresses. It's how you choose to look at it. Stress can also be very exciting. It can light you up. It can bring excitement and energy. I saw this analogy once that I love where it talks about the difference between stress and burnout because they're not the same thing. Stress, imagine you have a bonfire, and with stress, you're putting a whole bunch of logs on the fire, but the fire is getting bigger, blazing hot, it's really warm, things like that. And that's what stress is like. It's about building a big fire. Burnout comes when you've put so many logs on and suffocated the fire that it's burnt itself out. You've lost your spark, you've lost your motivation, you've lost your, energy and that type of thing. And so you can have stress, you can have that fire going, but when you're intentional, well, you think about anybody out there knows how to make a fire, you need some space between the logs. They need oxygen, they need space, they need breathing room in order to create that fire. You need to be able to not throw too many logs on at once. You have to space it out. And so that's where looking at your time and your energy and how you're taking that space and energy allows you to manage stress in a way that feels good for you. Everyone's going to have different preferences. Some people, say they work best under pressure. Some people like to not have any pressure. And so how you plan your time is how you're going to manage your stress in the way that feels best for you, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. So it doesn't feel like you're on the edge of burnout because you put too many logs on at once. It's about managing it so that it just stays that perfect little warm fire that helps take care of you.
So Thank you so much. This is a wonderful analogy. I love it. What is one thing that you see entrepreneurs or people that is a common thread that you think that everybody should not do, and how do you remedy that?
I don't know if there's always one specific thing. Like I said, I think the boundaries part is probably the biggest thing. I know I've totally done that myself, guilty, of just being aware of those boundaries. Like I said, because it's our passion, because it's something we love, still being able to take some space from it is healthier than just being in it alone. And this can happen not just even with business owners, whether you're in a relationship that you go all in on, as a parent, you go all in on your kids and you kind of isolate yourself from those other pieces of your life. I think that's one of the biggest areas. Also, just sometimes I think comparing what everybody else is doing instead of just figuring out what's going to work best for us. How I set up my day in business might not be exactly how you would do it, Munira, but I think we could both be super successful doing it in the way that works best for us. And so instead of always trying to copy what everybody else is doing, you can take that information, but really see how it works for you, what's best for you. Some people work best in the morning. Some people work best in the evening. Some people, need to do a workout and that kind of thing first. Other people need to clear their inbox before they start taking some time for themselves. And so, like I said, it's really individual, but it takes some practice and it takes some, intentional space to be able to put the energy into this. But once you do, not only does the practice start to automate it where you don't even realize you're doing some of these habits and routines, but then, the benefits just start coming in so much easier.
Wonderful. I love this segment, and it is so natural to talk about this. Thank you. And we would like to continue this forever because we talk about this, and burnout is such a big thing. But unfortunately, this does bring us to the end of the episode of Munira's Musings. Do you have any last words that you would like to talk to us about?
Absolutely. The one thing I think we always forget to do is to give ourselves grace. We are human, we mess up, we're not perfect, as well as, especially that perfection part. I think we expect to be good at things as we become adults really quickly. But you think of when you're little, if you're learning to walk, you're learning how to ride a bike, you're going to fall. You're going to fall a lot. You're not going to do it great, but that's okay. You keep getting up, you keep trying, you keep practicing until you can do it on automatic without even having to think about how you walk, how you brush your teeth. And so when it comes to starting new habits, when it comes to doing these types of things, allow yourself the grace just to be perfect. And it's okay to mess up. It's okay to kind of catch yourself and start again the next day. But I think allowing ourselves that is then how we keep going. We build that consistency, we persevere, and we build that resilience and mental fitness that helps us to be successful and create that lifestyle that you love. And so if anyone has any questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me, whether it's via my website, bestdlife.com, on social media, also at Bestie Life. I have a podcast, I have a book. There's so many different ways you can get access to this information and help start implementing it into your day-to-day life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of this episode of Munira's Musings. I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about, maybe a fresh idea, a little encouragement, or just a new way of looking at the world. If it did, why not pass it along with a friend or keep the conversation going? Because if you'd like to hear more stories, go ahead and like and share and subscribe to our channel, because then the next one will find its way to you. Thanks for spending time with us. And until next time, stay curious, stay open, and keep making your mark. I'll see you in the next episode next week. Thank you.
Bye.